A boy wishes for a doll, but he will soon discover that his wish will turn into his worst nightmare when he becomes the main target of his favorite toy. That's why today on the Summarizer, Child's Play. The story begins one night when a policeman is chasing a murderer through the city and is shot in the leg, and seeing that he's abandoned by his partner, he enters a toy store in an attempt to flee. There he's shot again, and when he's seriously wounded, he promises the policeman that he will finish him and the other criminal named Eddie who ran away, leaving him alone. Then in panic, he says that he must find someone soon, when a pile of boxes of dolls from the toy store falls on him, and when he sees one of these dolls, he gets an idea and starts to laugh. Then the killer begins a kind of invocation in another language, and with his hands on the doll, he transfers his body to it. And one of the most iconic characters of horror slashers is created. Now we meet our protagonist, a 6-year-old birthday boy named Andy who makes breakfast for his mother, apparently has no feeling in his hands, and spends his time watching ads of a doll named Good Guy, which is the new toy he expects to receive in one of the unopened presents in the living room. But then when he opens the present where he imagines Chucky is, he finds that inside the box there are only new clothes. And that bitch who gifts clothes to a 6-year-old child is called Karen.
That bitch.
Then his mother apologizes for not being able to buy it. Later at Karen's work, one of her coworkers comes running with the news that in the alley behind the store there's a peddler who sells the doll and convinces her to go buy it for her son.
Hey, hold on, you! How do we know the damn thing isn't stolen, huh?
Steal this!
On the other hand, the boss informs her that she'll have to cover another worker's shift, so she'll have to work all night. And because of this, her friend offers to take care of Andy while she works. Later, after picking Andy up from school, she gives him the gift and he's thrilled to see that it's the doll he wanted, so he shows his mom how it works by asking his name.
Hi, I'm Chucky.
Then he thanks his mom and she wishes him happy birthday. Later, Karen's friend is at the house taking care of Andy, and then scary things start to happen, like when suddenly the doll comes to life and starts to watch the news on TV. Or when after the boy tells Maggie that the doll wants to watch the news, she hears how the TV turns on while she's in the kitchen and sees Chucky sitting on the couch watching the news. However, Maggie doesn't believe when Andy tells her it's Chucky, accuses the boy of telling lies, and lays him down on the bed next to the doll. Moments later, we see from Chucky's perspective how he slowly approaches where Maggie is and runs into the kitchen, grabs a chair and hides. She's shocked when she feels someone running, so she decides to investigate. Meanwhile, Chucky takes a hammer and hides. Maggie is frightened to find the door open, but when she checks and finds nothing, she turns around, and at that moment is hit with a hammer on the forehead, which gives us the first kill of the movie. Later, Karen arrives at her apartment to find the news that her friend died after falling from the kitchen window. The detective tries to find out if the footprints found at the scene are from Andy's shoes because they are small ones, but finds no match, and Andy tells them that the footprints are Chucky's, but they of course don't believe him. Later, Karen hears whispers in Andy's room, and when she enters, she realizes that Andy is talking to Chucky, and that Chucky told him that his real name is Charles Lee Ray, and that Maggie was a bitch who got what she deserved. This causes her to ground the boy for making up stories. As she leaves the room, she stays outside trying to hear what's going on inside, but Chucky figures it out and pretends to be a simple doll once again. The next day, she takes Andy to school, but this time the boy goes with Chucky, and his mother, confident that he will no longer make up stories, says goodbye to the boy. But he escapes from school with Chucky and takes the train through the city to a dangerous area following the instructions of the doll, where apparently is the house of Eddie, who's the guy who ran away when he was escaping from the police. Now when arriving, the boy puts the doll on a chair outside the house while he goes to pee, an opportunity that Chucky takes to enter the house, and again we see him in first person letting the gas escape from the kitchen. Meanwhile, Eddie wakes up when he hears noises, takes his gun and looks around the place firing 2 shots while Andy approaches looking for Chucky, but when he sees that it's a child, the criminal calms down. At that moment, Chucky begins to laugh and Eddie enters the kitchen, opening the door and firing his gun, causing an explosion that destroys the house, killing him immediately. Later at the police station, Andy's mother goes to the detective's call and he informs her about the events. Meanwhile, Andy is questioned by a policeman when Karen arrives and tells Andy to tell the truth or he'll be taken away from her. So Andy asks Chucky to talk so they can believe him, but he pretends again to be just a doll. The point is that they believe that the boy is crazy as fuck, so they tell his mother that Andy will stay in the hospital for a couple of days and she has no choice but to go home alone with Chucky. Once home, she demands Chucky to talk, but he pretends to be a doll again, and relieved not to find anything strange, she sees the doll's box and realizes that the included batteries are in the box. At that point, she decides to check the doll for batteries and is terrified to see that the doll doesn't have them in it. And now convinced that Andy is telling the truth, she tries to force Chucky to talk by threatening to burn him in the fireplace.
You stupid bitch, you filthy slut! Did you fuck with me?
There they start to fight. Chucky bites her and then runs out of the apartment. And then Karen starts chasing him, but he finally escapes. She then goes to the police station to talk to the detective, tells him that Andy's telling the truth and explains what happened in her apartment. But the policeman doesn't believe her, so she decides to question the peddler who sold her the doll. Then with the help of Detective Mike, the homeless man tells them where he got the doll, which is the same address where he had the shootout with the killer. But after telling her this, she decides to find out how the killer managed to get into the doll, so she asks the cop where Charles Lee Ray lived. Despite Karen's insistence that he'll be next and that he should be careful because Charles promised to kill him, he doesn't believe her and goes to investigate the killer's files. Then, while driving home, Chucky appears to be in the back seat with a cord to choke him, but the detective escapes by burning him on the cheek, and after fighting for a while, he shoots him in the chest, causing him to flee the scene. Meanwhile, Karen arrives at dawn at Charles's house and sees that this murderer is a fan of diabolical rituals, when she's surprised by Detective Mike, who tells her that according to the murderer's file, he spent a lot of time with a man who must be found before Chucky. At the same time, in another part of the city, a man named John is surprised by Chucky, who claims that he wanted to know how to defeat death so that no one could hurt him, but despite that, he was hurt.
It hurt like a son of a bitch, it even bled.
To which the man explains that the more time he spends in that body, the more human he'll become. Then Chucky demands him to find a solution, and he refuses, telling him that he must be eliminated for being an abomination and for using his teaching for evil. But then Chucky shows him a voodoo doll to force him to tell him how to get out of the body, so the man tells him that to achieve this, he must transfer his soul from the doll to the first person to whom he revealed his true identity. And after that, he murders him by stabbing a knife in the chest of the voodoo doll. Elsewhere, Mike and Karen follow close on the heels but arrive at John's house late. However, John manages to warn him of Chucky's plans and reveals to them that destroying his heart is the only way to get rid of him. Meanwhile, at the psychiatric hospital, Andy sees that Chucky has arrived and begs the doctor not to leave him alone because the doll is gone to kill him. But the doctor doesn't believe him. Then Chucky gets the keys to the room where Andy is, but he manages to escape. Chucky chases him through the hospital when the boy is caught by a doctor, but Chucky wounds him in the leg, and when he falls, he gives him electric shocks until he dies. Andy runs away terrified, and at that moment Karen and Mike arrive at the hospital looking for him. But when they find out that Andy escaped, his mother assumes that he's heading home, so they decide to go back to their apartment. Once home, Andy tries to seal the entrance with chairs so Chucky can't get through, while he goes up the elevator pretending to be a doll in front of an elderly couple that comments on how ugly the doll is.
Ugly doll.
Fuck you.
At the same time, Andy hides in his bedroom closet while thinking of a way to defend himself with his toys. Chucky then enters the apartment through the chimney with a knife in his hand and begins to stalk Andy, who's waiting for him with a baseball bat, which doesn't work because he fails to hit him, and Chucky chases him through the apartment, hitting him with the same bat and falling unconscious. There he starts the ritual to transfer his soul to Andy's body, but at that moment his mother arrives with a detective to have the final fight against Chucky. At that moment, Andy wakes up and sees his mother fighting with the doll that falls into the chimney. Karen takes advantage of that to open the gas at the same time that she asks Andy to get the matches. Andy immediately lights a match, and seeing this, Chucky begs him not to do it and to remember that he's his friend until the end.
This is the end.
Finally, the boy burns the doll and he comes out screaming and rolling on the floor while the flame consumes him forever, or at least we think so. Because moments later, the detective wakes up and seeing that he's injured, Karen tells Andy to get him the first aid kit when he realizes horrified that Chucky's gone. Then Chucky appears again and starts another chase trying to catch the boy and kill the mother, who manages this time to shoot him several times, ripping off his head and parts of the body. Finally, Chucky falls to the ground, so she approaches and shoots him until she runs out of ammo. At that moment, the other detective arrives and reports what happened. However, upon hearing Mike's version, his partner can't believe it, so Mike tells him to find it out for himself. He takes Chucky's head to prove to Mike that he's just a doll, when Chucky's body appears once again from the ventilation hatch and tries to strangle the detective, so Mike shoots him in the chest, aiming for the heart, finishing Chucky once and for all. Seconds later, a police car arrives and they go to accompany Mike, who is wounded, to the hospital. Finally, Karen takes Andy out of there while the boy stands there looking at Chucky's remains as if suspecting his death. That was Child's Play. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment which movies or series you'd like me to summarize and make a kill count for. See you later.
Go to work. Okay. Bye.